UCF did it. They squeaked one out versus Oklahoma State. But what happened between the first and the second half that got the UCF Knights to win?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. Turn us on, turn us up. We'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend, James Duncan, UCF sports commentator extraordinaire. You were at the game. You've been at every home game covering for us live, which we really appreciate, James. On tonight's show, we're going to talk about the dichotomy between the first and the second half. What a disaster of a first half for UCF. They squeaked out the win. Earlier this week, we talked about you lose this game, you're bad. And they couldn't lose this game, James. They had to win this game. They did win this game. And then, we're going to end the show just talking about UCF keeping their bowl hopes alive and the implications of that here, because we have some other news that I want to touch on, but we'll do a more in-depth show later. Let's start at the top here. UCF started this game. Punt, interception, punt, interception. That was the first half in an absolute disaster of a game offensively in the first half. Talk to me about Oklahoma State. I mentioned they're at the bottom of the league in almost every single defensive category. And you said, hold my beer. We're just going to let you guys look like the 85 Bears on defense. And I was very, very disappointed in that first half. What went wrong in the first half for Scott Frost versus Oklahoma State?
Honestly, it was a normal tale of UCF kind of just holding themselves back. The defense came out really slow. There was a lot of moving guys on and off the field. There was a lot of rotation that was very slow, interesting rotation as well. Derek LeBlanc, unfortunately, had a game-ending injury. He will most certainly be on the injury report next week, as he immediately walked off and got out of jersey and had a brace on. So that's not something that you wanted to see. But yeah, you had a lot of guys banged up this week that decided they were going to play. I'm sure that's because of senior night, but yeah, a lot of getting in your own way. I believe the Knights had 10 penalties for 72 yards tonight. It felt like a lot more. There were multiple false start penalties, delay of game. There were 2 crucial holdings by Jabari Brooks and Paul Rubelt. Some really, really unfortunate timing for these penalties, but it just seems like you're making penalties all the time, so it's going to happen at a bad time as well. There's never really a great time for a penalty, and it seems like the Knights just could not get away from it. Now, I will say, on defense played very clean tonight. There was no face masks. There were no pass interference calls on the defense. There were no defensive holdings. There was no issues on the defense in terms of disciplinary, items. But with the offense, wow, really, really, really rough. And you could tell Taven was very upset about some of these play calls. Taven was very upset about how quick he was getting pressured. And it just felt like the Knights got frazzled. You would have liked to have seen maybe somebody to create an opportunity for Taven. It felt like when you look downfield, there were receivers open, but he would miss them, or there would be an inside ball that was supposed to go to the outside, or the ball was thrown behind, or even I saw a couple drops this game. So the Knights just looked like they could not get it together, Mike.
Yeah. Look, tough. It's tough. It was the tough first half, but you got to be able to bounce back from tough first halves here. Only 61 plays run in this game for UCF. So you had a time of possession that you actually won by 3 minutes in here in this game, but a lot of that was about the second half and then being able to get things going in the second half here. 5 of 14 on third down conversions, 2 of 2 on fourth downs. There were some bright spots here and there, but you were 2 of 2 in the red zone, but only 2 red zone trips the entire game. I am James. I'm gonna. This is a pet peeve of mine, but it sucks, man, that we hired an offensive head coach, and the offense looks bad, just bad at times. Can I say that it looks bad at times?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I don't want to be super negative because they won the game, and we're going to talk about the second half, which was better. Right, and it was just enough for you to win the game, but you came up with a big defensive play at the end. But this was a bad team that you came out flat against at home on senior night. And I said this earlier this week. If you lose this game, I'm putting it squarely on coaching for being not getting your team ready mentally and up for this game. You got to go to BYU next week, man. And so they're going there with a win and not a loss. But boy, that the first half had me on the edge of my seat. Like, no. I have been saying for weeks, UCF may not have any great wins on their schedule, but they didn't have any bad losses. This would have been a bad loss, and that first half had them squarely pointed in that direction, in my opinion here. Before we move on here, talk to me about Taven Jackson in the first half. Right, Miles Montgomery did play. He was on the questionable list. Jaden Nixon played. Miles, 18 carries for 81 yards tonight, only 4.5 yards per carry, but certainly, he came back and maybe took a little bit of that load off Taven. Taven had 7 carries for 18 yards, so he was a part of that run game as well. This team has gone as Taven has gone. He threw for 271 yards per night, 64% completion percentage, but 2 interceptions. And, both of those, I believe, were in that flat first half. How do you assess Taven Jackson here? Because we have some other news I want to talk about on the back end of this.
Yeah, no, Taven looked rough, and I think he knows that. Coming into the locker room after the first half, he had his head down. It was really nice to see UCF fans kind of try and cheer him up. I heard a couple guys being like, Taven, keep your head up. Taven, you're all right. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, those are the kind of things that you want to see from your fans. Because if a guy's having a rough day or, a rough season, you want to be able to pick them up. These guys aren't just players on a football team. They are people. And so, making sure when it really comes down to it, you're getting positive energy into these guys' lives. But yeah, I think he knows he had a rough first half. I don't think his second half was all that great. But it was interesting. The first pick was a ball that had gotten, popped up into the air, but he also threw it to a Knight that was surrounded by 4 guys collapsing on him all at the same time, or what I like to call a hospital ball. Those kind of throws get your guys injured. Luckily they weren't injured, but definitely a tough position to put your guy in. He gets hit, the ball gets popped up, and it's a pick. The second one was just a horrible ball. Not a great decision, but it was at the end of the first half. You kind of want to see if you can get big chunk yardage. So, I mean, I can't really, you just chalk that one up to just not being a good ball, not being a good decision. Now, I will say, Taven's second half, or do we want to talk about it in the next segment, Mike?
Let's talk about it in the next segment. Let's get to the break here, because I don't want to run too long here in this first segment. We're going to get to the break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about that second half and the bounce back by UCF offensively that ultimately got them the win here. We talked about the negative. Now it's time to talk about the positive, and we're going to talk about all that positivity next, right here on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time, the best place for you to buy tickets. College football is here. We are at the end of the season, but you should be excited. There's still tailgates, end-of-season rivalries, and a bunch of reasons to cheer your face off in person. Let's be real. Getting actual tickets to the game can feel like more work than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why we use Game Time here at Locked On UCF, the app that gives advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Look, in just a couple taps, you can see amazing deals to all your favorite college football games. And I'm talking about deals as low as $25. You can't beat that. $25 to go see a game live. And they have an amazing feature called Zone Deals where you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save a ton of money on the tickets. It's a great thing. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way you can buy tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase, guys. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. I want to thank our title sponsor, Game Time, for look. If you bought tickets through Game Time for this one, you got a thriller that you probably did not anticipate. I want to talk about that second half. As I mentioned before we went to the break, it was a rough first half for UCF. Again, when you look at their drive chart, man, it was rough. Punt, interception, punt, interception. They opened up the third quarter with a touchdown. Punted a bunch of times, TD and a field goal to close it out. And, man, let me tell you something. 10 points right at the end to take the lead and then shut the door on them defensively with the Braden Marshall pick. The announcer was full. He thought he was in. He was like, pick six. Oh, yeah, he stepped out. But it was a very timely interception. Alex Grinch's defense has showed up for UCF when they've needed them, I feel like the most, especially in these actually winnable games for UCF. But offensively, you had to just muster just enough to win this one. And they did it. There's not a lot of college football games, I'm going to tell you, in conference that you win scoring less than 20 points. UCF pulled it off tonight. But again, in my estimation, Oklahoma State is the worst team in the league here. So I was disappointed to see this game as close as it was because, quite frankly, I think they're worse than North Carolina. And you blew North Carolina out. So Taven Jackson, as I mentioned, he came up just shy of the 300 yards passing in this one. So he had to have a bounce back in the second half. What worked just enough in the second half, in your estimation, that the Knights were able to pull out this one?
I think what worked is probably in my personal opinion, the offensive breakout player of the year for UCF, and that is Dylan Wade.
I was going to say.
Kid is an animal. Yeah. And if you saw my tweet, you better hope that kid wants to stay at this school because him and his family are at every single game. They are cheering their butts off, and their kid is going off. He, in the past couple weeks, right? This week, 145 yards on four
catches.
On 4 catches. He averaged 36.3 yards a catch with 2 TDs, one of them including an 83-yard TD catch. Last week against a tough Texas Tech, had the only touchdown for the Knights. Even got hurt on the play, came back in the game, had 6 receptions for 45 yards in that game. Previous game against Houston, 6 receptions for 80 yards. This kid has been everywhere, and he is open. And for QBs that struggle, whether or not it's in the pocket, out of the pocket, who do they want to look for? They want to look for their tight end. They want to look for a big, sure hands target that is going to catch the football. And lately, that has just been Dylan Wade. And I really think that this kid is setting himself up to have an elite season next year. I hope he finishes this year out strong and healthy. I think, what you mentioned earlier about this team being a lot worse than UNC. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think our team is a lot more healthy. Remember, you have guys like Rodney Laura, who hasn't really made an appearance. Horace Lockett that hasn't made an appearance. A lot of guys have really lost that war of the injury report, and you had an elite defense that game. Now your defense is good. I wouldn't say they are elite, you still have elite football players on that defense, like Malachi, like Nigel Leak, like Lewis Carter, Kozlowski, Philip Dunham. I mean, you've got guys on that team. But before, you had guys in your starting and guys in your backup that were murdering other teams.
Yeah.
And you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, that sucks, but it is what it is. That's, you know, college football. But Mike, this game, Dylan Wade, got to be happy about it, right?
Yeah. You have to be. Look, he only had 5 targets. So he had 4 catches on only 5 targets. And he made the most of his opportunities in this game. And you've got to have a go-to. It's nice when it's a tight end. Honestly, it's really nice when it's a tight end. When you have a guy who can catch on the outside or go over the middle, you know, he is a fairly versatile tight end so far as we've seen this year. But struggles at quarterback mean limited opportunities for these guys. Speaking of quarterback, we got a little bit of news here. Kane Archer decommits. Rocco is coming to UCF. Talk to me about this, man. I'm a big Kane Archer guy.
I think a lot of people are, and you know, I find it interesting because this was the first time I think I've seen people really upset about a 3-star decommitting. If I'm honest, because with Gus, we were treated to 4 stars galore. And then you get a 4-star guy that comes and commits, and people, you know, 3-star decommits, and people are upset, man. But something that I would have loved to have seen is some sort of QB competition. I think nowadays in college football, guys that are coming in, they want to be the only quarterback in their class, or they want to be one of 2, and they want to feel like they're the better guy. And I'm not saying that's what's happening with Kane here, but I'm saying it could be the scenario. I had a nice conversation with Rocco today. Him and his family are good people. And, you know, I asked him to come on the show, and Mike, he seemed pretty.
Yeah. Okay. All
he
right.
seemed pretty
Rocco
excited about it. So
Marriott.
maybe we get a little Rocco Marriott interview. I'd love to get him on the show. Love to, you know, get him in front of some Knights and, you know, have him have the opportunity to talk to you guys. So, yeah, I think it's interesting that Kane decommitted. You know, I felt like he was really one of those guys that was locked in, but also the recruiting season isn't over, and you never know what can happen between now and signing day.
Look, man, these kids are watching everything that's happening on the field right now with these quarterbacks, and you may see opportunity if you're Rocco Marriott to come in, if you can be an early enrollee. Now, Kane was going to enroll early, and man, we're at the end of November. In my head, I was thinking we just got to make it like 3 more weeks, and he's a UCF Knight. I plan on doing kind of like an exit interview thing with Kane Archer, just to kind of see. I don't know if we'll do it on camera, but certainly I will get his thoughts on, you know, his decommit. And, you know, maybe he felt like, you know, with whoever's going to be the incumbent, plus, you know, Dante Carr, plus, you know, Rocco, maybe I need to go elsewhere. And I get it. Look, I get it. It's a game. He certainly, his NIL value has risen this offseason. He was the only 3-star quarterback to make Rivals preseason All-American or their in-season All-American list. And he's a great kid. He's got a good head on his shoulders, but he wants to play football. And you do have to go someplace where you feel like there is a path to playing time. And looking at the QB situation as it is now, he probably saw a path to playing time. But if you're going to bring in a 3rd quarterback in the same class, that can be a little rough. That can be a little rough. 3 quarterbacks in one class is a little rough.
I understand that, Mike, and I definitely see, you know, where someone would look at that and be intimidated or say this is not for me. But I think if you look at UCF's history, we played 8 quarterbacks in the past 2 seasons, Mike. If there is any team, and actually maybe 12 in the past 3 seasons or you know, 11, if you're looking at any team where you're going to have an opportunity to go get on the field, I think it's the UCF Knights. I really, really do, especially at quarterback. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think guys like Dante, you know, he could come here and he could be buried on the depth chart and he might rise up. Rocco Beck is coming in here, and most likely we are either going to have one quarterback from this room that is currently in this room stay in this room. Potentially. We might have all four. We might have zero. We might have all four leave. So I think the opportunity is there for these guys to come in and ball out. But you also never know what they're hearing from staff. A lot of times if staff move in a different direction, they might cool off on another guy and say, hey, man, we actually want to reserve this space for a scholarship for somebody else. And you never really know. And a lot of times people look at the kid and they're like, why would he decommit? And why would he do this? Guys, there's always more that's happening behind the scenes. So, obviously I wish the best of luck to Kane. I think he's a great kid. And I think he's going to have success wherever he goes.
I do too. Look, man, it just kind of is what it is. That's how I feel. And I know that may sound kind of flippant to some people, but this is recruiting. When you're recruiting at a high level, you're going to bring in multiple kids. If a guy is decommitting because of a particular player that you're bringing in, he's got to do what he feels like he feels is best for him. But your job as coach is to stack as much talent as possible, because you just don't know what a kid is going to do once he gets in, right? And all the dogs I know, man, they don't care who else you're recruiting. They feel like they're going to be the best, and it doesn't matter what you do, because I'm going to be the best and you're going to see that I'm the best. So best of wishes to Kane Archer. Look, let's get to the break, and when we come back, Andrew Gluchov, senior writer, UCFKnightsZone.com, is standing by. He went to the post game to talk to Coach Frost. So on the other side of the break, you and I will talk to him to see what Scott Frost had to say about his Knights squeaking one out over Oklahoma State. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You can even combine all your bets into a same-game parlay for a chance at an even bigger payout. This is something I love to do, and I have a lot of fun doing it. I have a lot of success doing it. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push, guys. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just head over to FanDuel.com to sign up today and get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. James, as I mentioned, they keep the bowl hopes alive with this win versus Oklahoma State. Look, it's BYU at BYU. So I don't know. There's precedent for 5-win teams making a bowl game. So maybe UCF sneaks in there. Either way, Andrew Gluchov is standing by. We're going to bring him in and talk a little bit about what he heard in the post game. He's been doing this all season. This is our last one of the football season. Andrew, thank you for joining us on the show today. You went to the post game. Talk to us about what Scott Frost had to say about his team. They bounced back in the second half. Braden Marshall comes up with a big interception at the end to slam the door on Oklahoma State to make sure there were no comebacks in the bounce house. What did Scott Frost have to say?
Let me first say I wish Kane Archer the best of luck. I'm going to be rooting for him. Great kid, a lot of potential. He'll make someone very happy. It's unfortunate, but that's the business of college football recruiting. So I just want to say good luck to him, because I really was hoping he would end up being the Knight, but
me too.
Business is business. You get it. As far as the post game, we saw a number of players. We actually ended up in there an hour. It was a pretty long post game. Start over with Scott Frost, obviously, and my question to him was about the adjustment that was made at halftime. Like what did you do differently? Because first half, give up 201 yards of offense and 50%, third down conversions for Oklahoma State. Second half, 27 yards, 0 for 5 on third down conversions. This is the same personnel. So what did you say to them to light a fire and get them going? First half, he talked about how they were using, a couple of gimmick formations and stuff that was just kind of catching them a little bit off guard. As you know, fired of Mike Gundy earlier this year. This team has been a team of transition. Their defense, they revamped their entire defense mid-season, which has thrown a lot of teams off. Kansas State, which put over 40 points on Utah today, scored 14 against Oklahoma State last week. So basically, he kind of told them, what do you want your legacy to be? This is, the end of the, end of the home season. This is senior night for us. Like, what do you want to leave behind? And he specified that he didn't, the coaches didn't get on people rip their face off, as he said, for making mistakes or penalties because that's not productive. So he was able to kind of hit the right note that really inspired this defense, because again, nothing changed personnel wise between the first half and the second half, but the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, look, this would have been a bad loss. This would have been a really bad loss at home to, again, as I mentioned, one of the worst teams in the Big 12, the worst team in the Big 12. But they were able to get it going in the second half. Miles Montgomery was questionable in this one. He ended up with 81 rushing yards on the night. Talk to me about the UCF run game here. They contributed just enough for UCF to pull this one out. And Miles was a big part of that.
Yeah, and one of the things that was mentioned was how much they were stacking the box. At one point, they had 9 players, crash in the line, which really hurt the running game. Scott thought if they had played a little bit differently, they may have been able to get a little bit more. But that opened a little bit of that outside, running lane, and that's where they started making some headway. And then when you had Taven Jackson tuck the ball and run, when there was a hole big enough to drive a Mack truck through, and this is something that he actually mentioned during his part of the post-game press conference. He was the last player to speak. He says, "I need to run more." He had a number of opportunities where he could have run the ball and got sizable yards, could have slid, could have got out of bounds, and not take a hit because his knees aren't 100%. As he said, his shoulder is a little banged up still. But as he flat out said, "I need to run more." And you know what? In the second half, he did. And he forced the defense to kind of have to reevaluate a little bit, because he also was passing for 75% completion in the second half. So by doing that, it helped all open up a big run for Miles Montgomery in the second half. And while they went for, towards the end, they were running the ball more to kind of milk the clock. Also shows their faith in Noe Morales as the kicker. Lou Grove's a semifinalist, I might add. And, he was, believe it or not, the kicker was one of the guys they brought for the post-game press conference. A lot of energy, a lot of confidence. And, we're talking about BYU next week. He goes, "I train in Denver. It's where my coach is. So you know what? I don't think kicking is going to be an issue there. I think we have to worry about the other portions of the game against the Cougars next week."
Yeah, look, that's funny that they brought him there. UCF.
Hey, you got the game winner. What do you expect?
Hey, look, man, I love it. UCF defensively coming up with 3 turnovers in this one. Wait, I'm sorry. That was fumbles lost. Sorry.
I was going to say, I remember 3 turnovers.
Yeah. Nope. 2 turnovers, it looks like. I'm looking at this correctly. But the big one at the end, again, by Braden Marshall, right, with the interception. Talk to me about Braden, man. This secondary has had some big names that we talked about. And some guys have been injured here, but Alex Grinch has held it together defensively for UCF. They've absolutely been the backbone of this team all year long, and they're going to have to be the backbone of the team headed into BYU next week. What did he have to say about his defense here?
Well, I mean, he was raving about how they did in the second half. Cole Kozlowski was another player who was brought out for the post game. And aside from the fact that we learned that, he would have totally joined the shirtless mob in the student section and be one of them, which, was a little bit of brevity in the post game, press conference. The energy that they have and what Braden Marshall brings to the table. He was out obviously, for some time. They don't talk much about the depth of some of these positional players, but I think losing him during that time, I don't think I think that was probably the biggest drop off in talent between Marshall and Jair Brown, who was basically whoever was left. I think if he was still around, I think for the space game, UCF probably would have won that game. They would have definitely showed a little bit better in other games too. I mean, losing Marshall was a very difficult loss. So to have him back and make some very key plays, not just the interception, but he made some key tackles elsewhere in the game. He just kind of was in the right place at the right time. And one of the things that Scott Frost talked about was the vocalness of some of the seniors. And I think Marshall, along with others, kind of fed off that. It wasn't just defensive seniors, but just seniors in general. And he said that was one of the areas vocal leadership has been something that's been a work in progress. So he said, this is one of the best that I've seen all year. And I think all the players really fed on it. The offense really was working much better in the second half. Yeah, we didn't see it on the scoreboard so much, only 17 points. But they were efficient. Taven Jackson threw for almost 200 yards by himself in the second half, and then 27 yards total offense given up by the defense in the second half. That leadership kind of bled everywhere. Everyone fed into it, bought into it, and you saw what this team is capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Great job reporting there, Andrew. We appreciate your insights here. Get home safely. We'll talk to you on Monday's show. Look, happy they were able to get the win. Happy that you were able to close the year out with a win. We only had 5 opportunities so far this year. Hopefully they give us a 6 next week versus BYU. Get home safely, my friend. We'll talk to you when you get back.
Sounds good. Talk to y'all later.
James, look, bowl hopes are alive. I do. We've talked about this, but I think it's hope. We've talked about how powerful a thing hope is, and you winning this gives you one more goal to strive for next week if you're Scott Frost for your team. Let's get that bowl game. Let's get that extra practice here. We've got a few comments that I want to get to before we get out of here, but I do want to get your thoughts real quick on the importance of winning this game and adding some meaning to next week as you head out to BYU.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to learn from this game is that even when you are playing your absolute worst, you can still find a way to win. You're down a lot of guys right now, a lot of important players that mean a lot to this program. And you're walking into a very harsh place to play in Provo, Utah, this late in the year. They're playing out of their minds. It's going to be a really tall task. And it's funny because I don't think the guys are looking at it like that. The bowl hopes are still alive. These guys want to go play. You have no idea how bad these guys that are seniors want to go play another game. They want to go play one more. It's great for them being able to get one more look in front of scouts. It's great for them to just play the game that they love one more time, at the collegiate level. I really think that if this team gets fired up, they may give you a chance. They may give you a chance next week. Hope is really big, and BYU could go, to the conference championship, and you could ruin them here. You could ruin their chance.
Right.
BYU's not going to come out, shy. They're going to come out swinging. So you got to swing back. So that's how I think that next week needs to go.
Yeah, I agree. Look, man, ruin whatever you can. I'm all about playing spoiler. I am. I'm good. Our season may be a 6-win season, but we're here to F up your championship season. And if you think that you're going to be able to just skate on through, man, these guys would love nothing more than to be the chink in the armor here for BYU at the end of the season. You've got to send a message, I think. You've got to send a message to the rest of the league that when UCF comes to your house, you're in for a dogfight. And winning this game, I think, keeps spirits up a little bit. Headed into that, losing it would have just been so deflating. And this was an important win in a lot of ways. I know I've said this wasn't a good team, but this was an important win. And I want to see these guys get to the bowl game. I do. I think that you went 4-8 last year, so a bowl game in year one is 50% improvement on your on the 4 wins that you had last year, right? Getting the 2 more wins plus maybe a bowl game, and then you get to win 7 games in year one. Come on, man, let's go here. Scott Frost is in a rebuild. He's in a rebuild, and he's got to go find players. That's why they're bringing in Rocco. It's, we're going to go get the best players available, and we're going to be the best team that we can be every single year. And we're going to keep building on that every year. In Power 4 college football, if you are not getting better, if you're standing still, you might as well be moving backwards because everybody else is trying to get better. And if you're UCF, you got to make sure that you're keeping up with your standard and you're improving your standard every single year. This is a necessary evil this season was in the process of rebuilding UCF to what it was when Scott Frost was last in Orlando. Can't wait to see what they do. Our guy KCO is in the comments. He said, love the UCF defense and Grinch. Consistent and adapting all year long, highly overlooked due to the persistent offensive struggles. Yeah, I couldn't agree with this comment more. He also says he loves the content, fellas. We love that you love the content. James is getting recognized out here in these UCF streets here from the podcast. I don't know if you guys know, but he's a little bit of a big deal down there. KCO also says, you guys think Dante Carr will ultimately play QB or perhaps have a short leash for a change to, an athlete/tight end? His film doesn't scream elite QB play. For what it's worth, I have an interview with Dante Carr on the channel. He talked about this with me. He said that one of the things that won him over with Frost and McKenzie was they were extremely honest with him about where his game was at, what he needed to work on, and what they think he needs to do to become an elite Power 4 QB. I love that he loves honest feedback, and he can take that and say, you know what, these guys think I need to improve my game. I'm going to go improve it all my senior season, and I'm going to come in a mindset to work and get better at the things that they say I need to get better at. And look, man, I don't know how changing positions is a hard thing to ask an athlete to do. It really is. And you have to really trust your coaches to say, okay, you think I would be better here? I'll go do that, because I'm telling you, that is a hole, James, that you can go down where you just get lost if you're not good at the thing that they're trying to get you to change to.
Yeah.
I know guys on, that I've covered and known throughout my college career and in my time in media that have said, I had a coach tell me to switch from D-line to O-line and put on some weight, and they did it, and they played 9 years in the NFL at that position change. But they really trusted their coaches. And so, man, if guys are changing positions and finding success, UCF has reached the pinnacle of identifying and developing talent.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. We're going to go on and get out of here. James, I want to thank you for joining me on today's show to talk a little UCF football. The Knights get the win. They get out of there 17-14 over Oklahoma State and their interim coach. No interims in Orlando, guys. We'll be back at you guys Monday morning, bright and early, with more Locked On UCF.